Hey everyone, my name is Jennifer and welcome to A Vintage Vanity. I am super excited for today's video because, well, you guys are here. And today is a little bit different than normal, as you can probably tell by the title of this video. But yeah, I have the itch to sew something and my sewing machine is broken and it is in the shop right now and it's been there for almost 2 weeks and I'm not quite sure when I'm getting it back. So I figured, how can I sew something without having to sew something? And then I thought, why don't I just use a glue gun? I mean, why not, right? Now, in the spirit of full disclosure, I do work my 9-to-5 job for the company that manufactures these glue guns and the glue we are going to be using today. But you know what that also means? It means I know a guy. So if you're interested in any of the products I'm going to be using today, you will find a discount code in the description box below for 15% off the website using Vanity15. You will also find links to the products as well as the fabric and patterns that I'm going to be using today. And that means I have a lot of glue guns sitting around my house. So when I got the itch to sew and create and couldn't do it, I looked at the glue gun and I'm like, could I? Is that possible? And what made me think it might be possible is this very specific glue that we have there, which is the fabric stick. It's actually one of our most popular glues. And one of the reasons why is because it's actually machine washable, right? You can't throw it in a dryer because the heat will just melt the glue again since it's a hot melt glue, but you can line dry your fabric. The other thing is that it is flexible and also the hold is crazy durable. And this comes in the cream color and black as well. So I was like, I kind of want to put this to the test. I kind of want to see if I can make an entire dress using a glue gun. Since I knew I was going to have some unique challenges with this project, I wanted to make sure I chose the right glue gun. And knowing that I was going to need a lot of glue, I decided to go with one of our full-size glue guns because that way I would have more glue hot and melted in the chamber waiting to sew. The other thing is that I needed control over how much glue I was going to be using. So that meant I wanted to get a detail tip on the glue gun. The other thing is that the bond process happens in the cooling off of the glue. And because I was going to be putting strain on the seams of this dress, because it is a fit and flare dress, I wanted to make sure that bond was as durable as possible, but I didn't feel like I needed to go overboard with it. So I went with a higher temperature glue gun, and this is a 60-watt glue gun. So the temp gets pretty hot so that I knew I would get a really strong bond when that cooled down. So that paired with the fabric glue, I thought at this point, I'm like, you know what? I stand a pretty good chance here. Then the decision was, what dress was I going to make? And this is where I could have made my life really easy on myself by doing something like a muumuu or a popover, something that didn't have a lot of structure and quite frankly didn't have a lot of sewing to it. But I decided, I felt like that would be almost cheating, right? So I decided to make a fit and flare dress and I chose the vintage Vogue 2902, and it is a fairly simple dress, but she's so cute, right? And I felt like it would be easier to do something that was just like a circle skirt rather than something gathered at the waist, because I thought, I don't know how that's going to go over. And I really, really want to make this as wearable as possible. It's so crazy. Do you think, let me know in the comment section below how you think this is going to go. Then of course, the important decision is what fabric are we going to use? And oh my gosh, did I find the cutest fabric. I think I must have been channeling my friend Christina when I chose this strawberry blueberry fruit print fabric from Joann, and it's just a simple cotton because let's be honest, I'm not gonna get super crazy with this, but it's so pretty, right? So summery, love it. And then I chose just a red cotton for the neckline details. And then I also decided I wanted to go with some trim on it because number one, glue oozes, so I knew that ooze would be a factor. Oh, that's such a great word. Ooze. Ooze would be a factor. So I wanted to make sure, especially up here around the neckline, that any oozing would be covered up. So I found this really great trim, just these little red flowers. And then, of course, I wanted something at the hem of the dress because that would also make it a little bit easier to hem. Because as you know, hemming a circle skirt can sometimes, even on a machine, be a little problematic. So I found this really cute little eyelet to go on the bottom of the dress. And of course I wanted to show more of a practical way that you might use the fabric glue and a glue gun. But I don't know, maybe making dresses with hot glue guns is going to be all the rage after this video. I don't know. And here's the most normal thing I did during the whole project, and that was to cut out the fabric pieces. And already I'm excited by this pattern because it is 5 pattern pieces. That's it. The one thing I also wanted to make sure that I did was follow it like I would a sewing pattern. So I am literally going to be sewing this dress as I would if it was a machine, but instead of a machine. I'm sorry, I'm gonna laugh about it constantly throughout this video because this pattern has darts at both the waist on the front and back of the bodice, as well as some small darts at the bust line. Originally, I thought that the darts were going to be my biggest construction hurdle, but turned out they weren't so bad, actually. After I had pinned them up, I took them over to the ironing board because I wanted to make sure that it had that nice, crisp dart look, because if the darting wasn't right, that would throw off the whole like shaping of the dress. What I did was I took out the pins and ironed. Then I laid the bodice right side down and kind of pinched the fabric back into that dart shape again, and then ironed. The ironing that I did at this point is typically the ironing I would have done after I actually stitched up the dart. And this allowed me to make sure that I had the shaping that I needed. Then it was time to glue the darts up. Still a ridiculous thing for me to say. Throughout this video, you're going to see me working on this pink mat, and it is a silicone mat, and it's to protect the surface of the table because the glue won't stick to it, and also if there's any glue drips, it won't get onto my table. Then I turned everything to the wrong side of the fabric and glued the dart down on the other side as well. I just thought that this would give a little more security to the bond because, like I said, there's going to be some stress on that dart. And I also wanted to make sure that the bond was really firm here because, again, this is going to have some pressure on it. So I used one of our little tiny green silicone pads and just pushed down on the fabric to make sure that that bond was nice and secure. Why do I think there's going to be so much stress on my darts? So what am I planning on doing? Doing like an eating contest or something? I don't know, but apparently I think they have to have Herculean effort right at that dart. But now we are going to attach Serenity? I don't know what this... Attach the sides of the bodice together, and I thought the easiest way to do this would be to have a guideline for where I needed to put the glue down. So I chalked in where the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance would be. And then before I glue up those seams, I want to pin the two pieces together. I just wanted to make sure that everything is lining up properly because I don't want anything to be wonky, because here's the big difference with sewing versus gluing. If you make a mistake on your sewing machine, you can just seam rip it. If you make a mistake with a glue gun, how do I know this? I don't know. You have a couple options, but you don't have a ton of them. You can reheat the glue and pull it apart, but there are some things you can't really go back on. So I wanted to make sure everything was kind of a first go at things. And when I was gluing up, I just kind of removed the pins as I went. And the other thing is, when placing that bead of glue down, I didn't want it to go right on that 5/8 of an inch chalk line because I think you guys know why, right? Beware the ooze. So what I did is I did it just on the other side of the line inside the seam allowance. And then I did put a little extra glue farther into the seam allowance to make sure that that was really nice and secure. Now this pattern is for a fully lined dress that includes the bodice and the skirt. I did decide to skip lining the skirt because it is, even if I was sewing it on a cotton skirt, I wouldn't do a lining on the skirt, but I did decide to do the bodice lining as well because I thought, again, it will help at the waistline too because it'll be glued in two places, but also it'll just finish nicely on the inside and then I won't have any like scratchy seams hitting me at all. So all I did was the same process for the bodice lining as I did for the bodice front that you just saw. Now, traditionally, after you sew up a seam, you open up your seam allowance and you iron it down. Obviously, can't do that in this situation, but I did want to make sure that the seam was laying to one side or the other. I didn't want it poking like straight out at my body. So I did take it over to the ironing board, and you guys are probably thinking, Jen, why would you do that? Irons are hot. It's going to melt your glue. You are so right. That is why I took my handy-dandy little silicone pad over to the sewing machine so that as I was ironing, I could place the silicone pad on top of the garment to make sure that the glue didn't separate because it would cool down super quick. And I found that this gave me really nice, crisp seams. Now it is time for the band and shoulder strap. And let me tell you, this is where my challenges came because there were just a lot of curves, there were right angles, there were sharp turns, and that is a little bit harder to accomplish with a glue gun. And I started off by just chalking that 5/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around the bands, and of course pinning them together to make sure everything was matching up properly. And then I just began to glue down the seam allowances, and I made sure to leave the top of the shoulder strap as well as the side and bottom completely unglued because we will need those to be able to attach it to the other band and also to be able to attach the band to the bodice, which you'll see in just a little bit. Now, I didn't get any footage of this, but I did pink the edges of the areas that we glued because we are going to need to turn this right side out. And I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a ton of bulk inside that shoulder strap. And of course, after turning this right side out, you would normally iron this anyway. And this is really where the finagling and finessing and a tad bit of frustration came because it just didn't want to lay super nice. So I really had to spend a lot of time with my little silicone glue pad and my iron to make this look as neat as possible. And because of I don't know, doing it for the first time and a little bit of frustration, things went a little awry and I got a little bit more oozing out of that area than I wanted. So, lessons have been learned. With all that being said, I really think taking the time to really iron these out nicely made them turn out really good. Like, I am so pleased with how these look. Once the front and back bands are ironed up, I need to attach the two of them together. So what I did is on one side, I went ahead and folded in my seam allowance, and on the other side, I just marked the seam allowance. That way I could just easily, she laughs at herself, slide one of the bands at the shoulder seam into the other band and then just glue right inside that little pocket there. Thought that would be easy peasy pudding and pie. It was a little crowded. It was a little crowded, I'm not gonna lie. It was a little messy. So that is when I decided, you know what would be great for the shoulder seam area? Some trim. Trim will fix all your gluing a dress mistakes. And for the side bands, I just placed a little bit of glue up at the top so I could nestle that into the other side seam and really get that firmly in place before I went ahead and glued down the rest of the side seams. The surprise challenge for me was attaching the band to the bodice. I thought that would be the easiest bit of all of it. But because both the band and the bodice are both on a curve and they're curving in opposite directions, if you were to do it the traditional way of putting the right sides together, the curves would be working against each other. And it would be a lot harder to manage that while gluing than it would be while sewing. So what I decided to do was to actually pre-iron my seam allowances. So I marked my 5/8 of an inch seam, and then because we're on curves, I clipped all the curves to make it easier to kind of like fold the material and I wouldn't have any like bunching. And once I did that, things got a lot easier. And then pin the bands to the bodice. I first glued the outside of the dress first, and once that was glued down, I opened up the dress and glued the inside lining portion. And then for probably what was my favorite part about the whole project was gluing the trim on the neckline of the dress. And I kind of changed things up a little bit at this point because what I noticed when I had glued the trim to the shoulder is that that cream you could kind of see poking through the flowers because the flowers were a bit of a darker red. So I decided that maybe I will switch to our black fabric glue, and my challenge with that is the black fabric glue only comes in mini. But that is okay because I don't need the heat to be so incredibly high when doing trim because it's not going to have the Herculean stress on it that the darts are going to have. So I decided to use one of our smaller cordless glue guns, and this is one of my favorites. It is the Lynn Lily. It's our collaboration with Lynn Lily of the Craft Box Girls, and they're in her signature colors, and I mean, hello, right? And this is cordless. There's no battery to it. It just, this part plugs into the wall and you remove it from here, and it works for like 2 to 3 minutes without having to be placed back onto the charger. It does again have the detail tip so I can really control my output of glue. And then I just popped in my black glue. And I think it was the right choice to make because I don't think you really see any of the glue coming from behind those crocheted flowers. And really the bodice is pretty much done. And then it is on to the skirt. And the skirt was probably the easiest thing to glue together because for the side seams, all I did was, again, 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, chalk down the side of the skirt, and just a bead of glue just inside the seam allowance there and marrying the two pieces together. It was really just zen. And then to pin the skirt to the bodice, I just placed the right sides together, pinned everything up, made sure everything matched up, and just began gluing. And then you could see that I was being firmly told by my boss that I needed to take a relaxation break. So we did. Now for the part that I thought would be really kind of the biggest challenge of the whole project is the zipper. And honestly, it turned out not being that bad at all once I ruined the first zipper, because you got to be real careful when you're gluing in a zipper that you don't get too close to the zipper teeth and that your glue doesn't ooze like the blob and make it so that you can't actually unzip your zipper all the way. So fortunately, I was able to just heat that up a little bit with my iron and pull the zipper off and insert a new one. And to do that, what I did was I ironed down my 5/8 of an inch seam allowance on both sides of the zipper opening. And then all I did was placed a bead of glue, again, the second time around, making sure it wasn't too close to the zipper teeth. And then I just made sure that when I was laying the zipper down onto the fabric, that the teeth of the zipper were lining up right with the edge of the fabric opening so that it would function like a zipper. The easiest way I can say that. You know, some days you wish you just had 3 hands or an additional paw. Once I got the one side of the zipper down, I flipped everything over to the right side of the fabric because then I wanted to make sure that I did right on this side was that when the fabric got laid down onto the glue, that the fabric for the opening were butting up together so that it would close really nicely. And that's it. So glued that baby in and zippity-doo-dah, we got a zipper. With the zipper in, I was finally able to glue down the bodice lining. And then all I had to do was hem the skirt. And let me tell you, this part was so enjoyable. I just put on some Star Trek and just zenned out attaching the eyelet to the hem of the dress. And what I did was I worked on the right side of the fabric and just placed the bead of glue right at the edge of the eyelet and placed that down so that the edge of the hem and the eyelet met up together. And it's gonna look a little funny because it looks like I'm putting it upside down. But the reason why I did this was that so once I had the eyelet all along the bottom of the hem, I was able to flip it to the wrong side, place a bead of glue at the edge of the hem, and then just simply press up the hem. And of course, using my little silicone glue pad. And that did 2 things, not only giving it a super strong bond, but also giving it a nice clean hem because it was almost like ironing your hem at that point. And we can unplug the glue guns now because we have a dress. It is seriously blowing my mind that I made this entire dress with a glue gun and fabric glue. And it turned out so cute. I actually love this pattern. I think it's a perfect summer dress and actually a pretty easy quote unquote sew up. I have to say I am so pleased with how well the gluing is holding up because I was bending over, putting my shoes on, doing a bunch of stuff, and this felt like a solid dress. Like I could go do an eating competition in this dress and not have to worry about my darts bursting at the seams or anything. I think the only real learning curve here is managing the glue so that it doesn't ooze out from the seams, but honestly, it's nothing a little good trim placement can't solve. With that being said, I still can't wait for my sewing machine to get back. So that is it. I hope you guys really enjoyed today's video. And of course, I love hearing from you. So go ahead in the comment section below. Let me know what you thought of today's video and crazy glue gun made dress. Did you think it was going to turn out this good? And of course, let me know like the craziest project you've ever done with a glue gun. I would love to hear that. And of course, you will find links in the description to all the products used in today's video, including that 15% off discount code for anything on the Surebonder website using Vanity15. Now, before I let you go, a huge subscriber shout out to Treasures Noir. Thank you so much for watching, liking, and commenting on my videos and just being a part of our cozy little online community. Now, of course, if you're gonna miss this face between uploads, be sure and follow me on all the social media as a Vintage Vanity. And if you want to keep watching more of my videos, go ahead and click on the video you see playing right there. And of course, if you don't want to miss out on being notified of new videos, make sure you click that subscribe button along with the notification bell. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you soon. Bye!